Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us for the UFC 292 preview show here on IMC Live. My name is Karl Bainbridge and I am joined by the man on the right-hand side of my screen. He is the Cliff Claven to my Norm Peterson. It's my friend and yours, it's Joe Neal. Joe, thank you very much for joining me.
Glad to be here. I'm very glad, and I'm saying this in honor of our mates over at OSW, Old School Wrestling Reviews, that I'm glad to be here as the Scott Steiner to your Booker T in the Main Event Mafia.
I will approve. Do I have to speak with
Yeah.
an African accent?
No, but I get to say there's nothing finer than hanging out with Joe Neal. So
I wonder why you went that way then. Yes, thank you very much for joining us here at UFC 292, where you can expect another 2 hours of random wrestling references, talking about internet shows that we've cameoed on. But most of you here are here to listen to us talk about the upcoming UFC pay-per-view, which will be taking place in Boston, Massachusetts. So it's our first card in Boston since 2019, which was the fight night between Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman. Weidman will be appearing on this card. We'll be getting to him a little bit later on in the show. And our last pay-per-view since UFC 220, when Stipe Miocic defended his heavyweight title against Redacted.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, like the erasing of Francis Ngannou was already started by the UFC. They are so petulant about stuff like this.
I think I wouldn't be surprised if, like, next big heavyweight fight, they go the hardest hitter to ever be in the octagon. And it's like, guys, I just watched Jackass 4, and that Ngannou was talking about how hard he hit.
Well, I saw it on the Fight Night card yesterday. I think Chukwi was competing on the card, and the graphic came up. First and only Cameroonian fighter in UFC history. So there is a complete
ridiculous.
erasing of him going on now. And Pua Sokaju as well. He was like years before him too.
Yeah, they got him just as a casualty. Oh, no. He caught a stray one, Sokaju. That's not fair.
So, as mentioned before, we are in Boston here. Now, Boston has played host, I think, to about 5 or 6 UFC cards over the years. Any sort of Boston memories for you over the years, Joe?
I think I always liked, what's it called? I think it was the Shogun Chael Sonnen card, I believe. But I remember Joe Lozon fighting Michael Johnson, and the table I was at, 'cause I watched it at like a sports bar, the table I was with was like, Joe Lozon, he's going to win in 1 round. And I'm like, I like Joe Lozon too, but he struggles against southpaws. And then it was a 3-round shellacking for Michael Johnson. And I remember just going, I'm sorry, guys, don't look at me. I didn't want Joe Lozon to lose. That's one of my big memories. And of course, I feel like whenever anyone fights there, it's legally required to have at least 2 or 3 guys come out to the Dropkick Murphys, shipping out to Boston, which I like that song. So
Wasn't that the same card with Travis Brown head kicking Overeem?
yes, it was. I think it was the third Fox card, but I think it was like one of the first times they were like, let's treat this as like a B plus or B tier main pay-per-view card.
Like, honestly,
they treated it pretty well.
The reason a lot of people are so hung up about the Apex cards these days and like the quality is that you go back and you look at those early Fox cards in terms of star power. They did treat them really well, and all fans want these days. I understand there's more events and things get watered down a little bit, but you want to make a big deal about these sort of high-end TV cards, and they just don't do that these days.
Yeah, I told you before, I had some friends over tonight, because it's 5 a.m. where I'm at, but I had some friends over tonight, and they were saying, like, is there fights every weekend, basically? Because they always, whenever they come by on Saturdays, they always see we have fights on. And we're like, yeah, like, basically. And he goes, that's probably a good thing. And I went, not really. I mean, the product gets watered down with, not everyone is a world-class fighter. And it's just kind of how it is. I also think, matchmaking's at fault. Once again, putting in my resume for taking over Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby's jobs. I think I do a fantastic job.
And we bring up the conversation when it comes to somewhat watered down cards. When we talk about UFC 293, we finally have a main event lined up for that one. The consensus always was going to be that Israel Adesanya was going to defend his belt in Australia. Obviously, being a Kiwi fighting Australia, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of people believed it was going to be Dricus du Plessis because he beat Robert Whittaker. Dricus, unfortunately, has an injury, isn't able to make the turnaround. Sean Strickland gets the call. Where do you stand on that one, Joe?
I actually talk about it on the recap show, so I don't mind, but I don't mind talking about it here. Is I my I think it's weird, but at the same time, I started kind of justifying it for myself as it would be really awkward if we went to Brazil and it's like, what's the main event in Brazil? Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad. Then like we go to London and it's like, well, who's fighting in Brazil? Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley. It's like I feel like, if you have the opportunity, you have a fighter from a different country, and you're going to do a pay-per-view in that country, you probably want them headlining it. So I feel like the logical step in most of these cases is to wait for DDP, but because they're in Australia, you kind of have to. It makes sense to have Sean Strickland, I guess, step up in, even though that doesn't make too much sense wise.
Are you giving Strickland any chance at all?
I think he's going to knock him out at the press conference in terms of the trash talking. How about that? Maybe my mind will be changed by the time we do the preview show there. And I'll actually, Karl, I can't spoil my thoughts yet. We haven't done the 293 preview show yet.
No, we haven't. No, and that will be coming up in a few weeks' time. So we've got all that to wait for. But now, though, we are going to be talking about UFC 292, and we're going to start with the prelims. You can see those on your screen right now. Now, not much in terms of sort of big star power when it comes to names, except for the big name right there at the top of the screen. So after 2.5 years away, after suffering arguably one of the most brutal injuries ever in the UFC octagon, Chris Weidman is back. He's going to be taking on Brad Tavares, who for a long time has been considered the sort of middleweight gatekeeper. Two questions for you regarding this, Joe. One, where do you stand on Chris Weidman coming back at all, bearing in mind his injury and the fact that he's getting up there in years? And two, is Brad Tavares a good litmus test to see whether Weidman still has it?
I think for the second answer, because that's shorter, I think Tavares is a good litmus test. For the first part, it's a little complicated. I personally love Chris Weidman. I think he's really fun to watch fight. He helped me look really smart and nearly win some money. If you've watched the retro reviews, you know what I'm talking about.
And please watch the retro reviews. Nobody else does. Yes.
Oh, they're so awesome. I'm not just saying that because I'm in them. I definitely help though. but I think Chris Weidman's awesome. I genuinely really like him, and his kind of downfall has been kind of hard, especially because a lot of it is just damage he accumulated in that Rockhold fight, I think personally. But I think a lot of it is also like age, like Father Time is just catching up with him. He may still be our boy, but Father Time has kind of looking down on him. And I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, win or lose this fight. And I think he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer if he didn't come back at all. And I think we all would have understood. So I'm kind of torn. Like, as much as I want to see him, probably shouldn't see him anymore.
Do you think the part of Weidman coming back it's almost sort of like a personal goal? Because I'm personally of the belief that win or lose, he's going to retire. Especially if he loses. But even if he goes out on a win, you just think to himself, I think the goal for Chris Weidman was to come back full stop. I don't think he wanted people's last memory of him in the octagon to be him breaking his leg off Uriah Hall's shin in 15 seconds.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. If he does, if he comes back regardless, win or lose, that's a crazy journey to be in, that's a crazy one. At the time, you never really think about, I feel like that's something historically we haven't really thought about. But there's that crazy picture of Weidman, Anderson, Connor, and John Jones. And it's 3 of the 4 guys in there have broken their leg in the cage, basically. So the fact that I don't think Connor's going back ever, admittingly, but like Anderson came back, that's that's already impressive. Even if that fight wasn't very good against Nick Diaz, but I mean, I'm gonna be. I could definitely see that because that's this is a former champion, the guy who finished Anderson Silva and ended the reign, who dethroned the king for so long. He probably wants a good final memory for his legacy.
Looking down the rest of the card here, the other big interesting thing about the 292 prelims is it's going to serve as the finale for the Ultimate Fighter. So there's one fight which has already been confirmed, so Austin Hubbard will be taking on Kurt Hollabaugh. Brad Katona is also in the final. He's going to find out his bantamweight opponent on Wednesday. Where do you stand on the Ultimate Fighter in sort of 2023? Do you think it still serves a purpose for the UFC?
I feel like all they did it for this one was I think them bringing Connor back was like a PR move to try and get people to tune in so they can make that money. And it also hyped up a fight that's never happening as far as I'm concerned, sadly. Um, I so I think in their mind it's serving a purpose of building up hype for like a potential Connor return. But I think in terms of in my opinion, the Ultimate Fighter first and foremost is like a two-part like product. You wanted to build up a fight, and so we can scout and showcase the next level of talent or the next stage of talent coming into the UFC. Because there's a lot of guys who didn't win tough and maybe not even made it to the finals that have had a great career in the cage. Like Brad Tavares, we just talked about, was one of those guys. Neal Magny, we're going to talk about later, one of those guys. And so like it's great knowing who there are and getting some name value off of them. But sadly, the Contender Series is just so much better at churning out guys. And I hate saying this, for way less money. And I don't understand from their point of view why they see the Ultimate Fighter being worth it. I feel like this is a Dana White like not wanting to admit something, one of his like brainchilds is dying off, and like kind of an ego thing maybe. But I don't know. That said, I am actually excited for the Austin Hubbard Kurt Hollabaugh fight because I love Austin Hubbard. He's so much fun to watch in there.
And I think Brad Katona as well. Like, I've been quite vocal in saying that I thought Brad Katona was very harshly cut by the UFC. So he's what, 2-2?
Yeah, super harsh.
And one of those losses was against Merab. And there's no shame in losing to Merab, who I personally think that we're looking at him as a future champion.
Yeah, I think Merab probably ties both guys in the main event, and maybe not so much one of them, but like Merab is definitely the number 2 guy in that division, it seems like, for sure.
Anybody else who takes your interest on the prelims?
I think there's always G3, which is your boy. He's always a fun G3. Watch. Yeah, and RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez, he's always pretty fun.
Yeah, I expect him to beat Tallulah quite comfortably. I'm also going to give a shout out to the flyweight fights. They're going to be opening up the card. Particularly Natalia Silva. I have been very impressed with her recently. Only one loss since 2016, which came against Marina Rodriguez as a strawweight. So she hasn't lost since she moved up to flyweight. She's taking on Andrea Lee. I think this is... Now, I did curse myself because I really bigged up... I forgot her name now.
Yasmin?
Yeah, Yasmin. Big time on one of the preview shows recently, and she got flatlined in about 20 seconds. So I am possibly putting a curse on her, but no, Natalia Silva, based on what I've seen so far, a lot of upside.
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely could see that as well. Always be on the lookout for fights like that, especially like I don't think Andrea Lee is necessarily great, or I don't think she's great necessarily, I will say. So, but she's a name, so that's going to be a big help, I think.
A solid hand.
Yes. And a marketable hand.
Yep.
Sadly, that's kind of part of it.
It's she's sort of like, we always like to throw in wrestling references here. It's like, she's sort of like X-Pac or Val Venus. They'll carry you to a decent match.
Yeah. Poor Val Venus, I hear that name, I only think of one thing happening, and that's the power going out.
I
You
usually
know,
think
you know.
I usually think of Kai and Tai.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm
Yeah,
referencing. Yeah, the power going out and some well-timed.
we are
Uh,
gonna we are gonna try and keep this PG, so we'll leave it there.
yeah, Simpsons level is what we were at. Sadly, the Attitude Era was way past the Simpsons.
So fight number one, we're going to be opening up the main card in the Bantamweight division, and it's a battle of top 10 contenders, as Marlon Chito Vera, the number 6 seed, is going to be taking on the number 9 seed, Pedro Munoz. Now, the bookmakers' odds for this one have Chito at minus 185. You can get Munoz at plus 155. So for Chito, it's a chance for him to get back on the saddle after losing to Corey Sandhagen. What's quite interesting to note, though, bearing in mind the main event, these are two guys with Sean O'Malley connections. Chito Vera being the only guy to beat Sean O'Malley, and Pedro Munoz, who had that no contest against him, in a fight that many believe that Munoz was winning before the stoppage. Do you think the UFC have done that
Yeah.
intentionally, or is it just coincidence?
I think it's a little bit of both. I'm sure someone probably realized that. I think it was a coincidence at first, I could see. And then they went, oh, hey, actually, look what we did here. I think more likely how this was booked is Pedro Munoz is still a pretty good name and pretty well known talent in the division. And I think they're kind of hoping Chito Vera gets back on that, momentum horse. Because, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in losing to Corey Sandhagen at this point. Uh, Dude had a torn tricep and, forced Dana White. He knocked out Dana White, basically. Forced him to leave in the middle of the fight. That's a win in my book. But, but yeah, Sandman's awesome. So I don't think there's any shame in getting smoked. And one judge weirdly thought he won that fight. I just remembered that. But I mean, in Munoz, he's still clearly, got some gas left in the tank despite his age. I think they probably booked it as to give Cheeto a decent challenge, but one they probably fully expect to, continue and get that momentum back. Because I think Cheeto Vera was super marketable for them, like with his just run of mauling guys' faces and stuff, and just he got the head kick over Cruz last year.
He
So.
did, and that was it. Never got many mentions. That, in my opinion, was one of the best knockouts of the year.
Oh yeah, it was insane. And Cruz was winning that fight early on. For most of that fight, he was winning, I thought, too.
So we'll talk about Marlon
Yeah,
Chito Vera in a little bit more detail here. So a 20-8 record. So it does look a little bit deceptive. A lot of people will see those 8 losses and think, is this guy really that good? A lot of those came early in his career. And he's still, 29, 30 years old? So he's still comparatively young for an MMA fighter. So some of his notable wins include Dominic Cruz, as we talked about there, Rob Font, Frankie Edgar, Davey Grant, the Sean O'Malley win, as we mentioned before, and also some of the veteran fighters Brian Kelleher and Brad Pickett. So his 4-fight winning streak was snapped by Corey Sandhagen last year. A big question mark when it comes to Chito Vera is, yes, he had the winning streak. Yes, he's got wins over a lot of big names. But they're big names who are arguably past their prime at the time they fought him. Is this a guy being in the right place at the right time, or is there a genuine world-class talent?
I think it's a mix of both. I think Chito Vera is an interesting commodity in the bantamweight division, as he's a guy with mega one-shot power. He clearly tons of finishes, a great kicker, great knees, elbows, and punches, very good striker. He just and that's not usually seen too often at 135. There's a couple of guys like that. One of them in the main event that I think is pretty similar to that. But if you look at some of the names on his list, I mean, Dominic Cruz I still think had some gas in the tank. He just got caught by Cheeto. Because I thought Dominic Cruz was doing pretty well in that fight. But then everyone else on it, the only one you can really say is Frankie Edgar, who retired pretty shortly after that. Earlier this year, or last year, I think. And that's the only one. I think Rob Font, that's a great win. Jose Aldo, he lost a decision where he was out grappled, but forcing Aldo to grapple with you is pretty impressive, I think. And who's an incredible grappler. Sean O'Malley, don't care. Sean O'Malley lost that fight. I don't care what he thinks. Sean O'Malley lost that fight. He got smoked. Um, but Davey Grant, super underrated win.
My
I
boy.
think. I think that's yeah. Davey Grant is a guy who could probably fight Marab tomorrow and give Marab like a pretty hard go. I think that's just a guy. He's just that kind of guy. He's like Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr could fight anybody and make it a tough one. And I think Davey Grant's in a similar position. So I think that's a great win, admittingly. Um, yeah, I mean, I think the Rob Font one has aged pretty well. I think, admittingly too. Uh, he's just kind of weird. You know, Cheeto Vera's kind of weird. He's infamous for only fighting the last 15 seconds of a round and of winning fights because of it. And it's kind of awesome and kind of infuriating if you're a fan of Cheeto like I am. It's really infuriating seeing him like, what are you doing? You're just letting Rob Font tee up on you. Is that a hook kick? And then, all right, time to him just take over the rest of the fight because of that hook kick. You know, it's just it's kind of frustrating, but I mean,
Nah.
he's a commodity, and I think him being in the right place at the right time definitely shows that he, definitely hurts him. But I think he is in that top 5 range probably.
And that has been one of the big criticisms that some people have had about Cheeto, which is sometimes he does have a lack of volume. And I think the Rob Font fight is, I think if you need a fight that encapsulates Cheeto Vera, it's the Rob Font fight. Because we have a guy who remains quite patient throughout. And for, 4/5 of that fight, Rob Font is teeing off on him. Rob Font's easily going to claim that round for himself. And then he lands the big strike, drops Font, and that's enough to sort of sway the judges. And it ends up being this quite one-sided victory at the end of it, because Cheeto just carries that power. I'm similar to you. I think that one of his biggest weapons is his kicks. And not just the power in his kicks, but the diversity of, it could be like low kicks. He likes to go up top, as we saw with Frankie Edgar, unfortunately. I think he's good in the clinch as well, using his elbows. It's a very blunt force approach that Cheeto takes in these fights.
He's got that LA Knight, yeah. BFT, blunt force trauma, yeah. He's got, he's got the shoes of a champion, the jacket of a champion, the jacket of a champion.
I love throwing in wrestling references.
I usually do them to see if I can get a pop out of you. I mean, I know I'm being really funny if I can make you laugh. So I love it.
You make it seem as if I have no sense of humor. I mean, you're right.
You have a great sense of humor. You have a great sense of humor, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it's my American brain. I usually assume English. They're very funny people, but they're really hard to make laugh. That's because like Simon Pegg. Apparently he's really hard to make laugh. So I was like, this is a challenge for me, being a small boy from Oklahoma.
We speak about kicks, and that brings us quite nicely onto Pedro Munoz, the king of the kicks, to a lot of people. So 20-7 record. He is also back on a winning streak after beating Chris Gutierrez, and that was on the April card, Holloway and Arnold Allen. So along with Gutierrez, he also holds wins over Jimmy Rivera, Cody Garbrandt, Brian Caraway, and also beat Rob Font early on in his career. But what's more noticeable with Pedro Munoz, it's not who he's beaten, it's who's beaten him. I've got a list here of some of the guys that have beaten him in his career. Rafael Assunção, Jimmy Rivera in their first fight, John Dodson, Aljamain Sterling, Frankie Edgar, Jose Aldo, and Dominic Cruz. That is a who's who of some of the best bantamweights and flyweights in UFC history. If you get past Pedro Munoz, you are worthy of being considered world class.
I 100% agree, because I know people are going to go, ooh, Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção. At the time, Assunção was basically number 1 contender constantly. He was kind of in that Belal Muhammad situation we have now. And Jimmy Rivera was awesome back in the day. And if it wasn't for a Marlon Moraes head kick, probably would have fought for a title.
Wasn't Jimmy like 20 wins in a row, something like that?
Yeah, he had a crazy win streak. Like, he was, including Uriah Faber, and he fought Piotr Jan back in the day, and I've covered it once again on the Retro Review. And that fight's way closer than time remembers it, I think. Jimmy Rivera was awesome. Like let's not dance around that. But like if you've beaten him, John Donson's awesome too back in the day. So if you've beaten him, you're something good. You're definitely something good about you.
And what do you think are the big attributes that have made Pedro Munoz such a good litmus test for this weight class?
I think he has kind of that ultimate decider power in his right hand. I wouldn't say he has quite the same explosive knockout power of a Cheeto Vera, but when I think of Pedro Munoz, I think of two things. He's going to low kick you, and if that doesn't work or that's working really well, he's going to throw a big right hand at you. And it's for me, it kind of feels like the old adage of don't fear the guy who trains 100 punches once a day. Fear the guy who trains one punch 100 times a day. And that's kind of what it feels like. He's asked Cody Garbrandt how that right hand was. He finished Brian Caraway with punches or with like I think a body kick, and then I think it was a body kick actually, but tons of power in his right hand, and he's gonna low kick you all the time. A lot of these guys he's fought have been really good at taking away the low kick or punishing him for the low kick. Like Dominic Cruz tried to use awkward movement and mixed in takedowns to take him down off low kicks. Jose Aldo in the latter stages of careers fought his entire style around beating someone who throws low kicks at him. So just kind of how it is. And I feel like I'm like cutting him short by saying like, oh, he's mostly known for these two weapons, but he's really good at those weapons. Like he is world class at these two weapons, and sometimes that's all you need. You know,
I think you can also add two more weapons to that, or one weapon and one more sort of armor, if you put it that way. One, this guy has a granite chin. Like, probably one of the best chins in that division. Now, admittedly, 36 years old, there are going to be some question marks about whether that's going to hold up. But also as well, if it gets to a grappling exchange, which could be a good source of victory, bearing in mind Cheeto's issues with Jose Aldo on the ground, he has a hell of a good guillotine as well.
Yeah, he's, now that we're talking about this, guillotine, right hand, where does he train at? Team Alpha Male? And he's at bantamweight? What's going on here? Is that why Garbrandt fought him? Did he leave Team Alpha Male? I don't know. I shouldn't rag on Cody Garbrandt too much, but yeah, he's got a great guillotine. I didn't he? No, it's Marlon Moraes caught him with the Rafael Sunset with the guillotine.
Yeah,
but yeah, that chin of his, I don't think he's ever been finished. Pedro Munoz, I don't think he's ever been finished. He's taken shots. Yeah, because I know Cheeto Vera's got a crazy chin as well, but I don't think he's taken the shots that Cheeto. Or I don't think Cheeto's taken the shots Pedro Munoz has. Jose Aldo blasted him with just punch combination after punch combination, and just nothing. John Dodson cracked him with bombs, nothing. Yeah, this guy's never taken the shots like. And the Cody Garbrandt fight alone gives me a headache. Like seeing both of those dudes just trade right hands for fun. It's alarming and awesome. I love that fight. Yeah, crazy chin on Munoz.
My best memory from that fight, I actually had a few friends over to watch that one because we watch it on like the Sunday mornings over here. Because I'm not staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I just remember my friends just sort of like open-mouthed, wide-eyed, just seeing them two swinging at each other, and like Rogan just going, "Ow!" like over and over again, and like, because we thought this was going to be quite comfortable for Cody Garbrandt. We didn't obviously acknowledge like the chin issues that he sort of become known with then, and so when Garbrandt gets dropped, the whole place just like, whoa.
I remember that fight because it was on the Anthony Smith John Jones card, and I remember this distinctly because ESPN still owes me money for this. My feed cut out on multiple devices, and they tried to make me rebuy it, even though they charged me. So my feed cut out right as Garbrandt fell. It was an ESPN Plus issue, and I still think they owe me money for that. I'm gonna remember this. But I remember going, I wanted to see Ben Askren fight. Wait, what happened? Did Cody get back up? Because they're just literally barroom brawl swinging, hitting each other at the same time, and Cody falls first, and then it was awesome. It was awful. But I got to rewatch that fight all the time, and because it's amazing. That fight is definitely one of the fights I go, you want to see what MMA really is? It's not this, but this is sweet. Yeah.
So we've got two guys here who have never been stopped in their careers. It is the closest fight bookmakers wise on the main card. Which way are you going with this one?
I think Munoz still has some in the tank because I think he was tuning up Sean O'Malley in their fight. But I think I'm going to go Chito Vera by decision here. I think he's just better, like right now at this stage in their careers. I think Cheeto's just better. I think Cheeto's entering his prime, and I don't think he's going to finish Munoz. I think that chin of Munoz is still just too much, but I could see him knocking him down and nearly getting it, but I don't think he's quite going to get it here.
I'm in a similar boat. I think that I always get wary when a fighter turns 35. I think 35 is a big cutoff point.
Yeah.
In fact, like Luke Thomas probably plays a big part in that as well, so thank you very much for that, Luke. But no, I think it's natural that a fighter is, on the whole, going to start slowing down at that age. I think that a prime Pedro Munoz has the tools that give Chito Vera some problems, but I think Chito hits a little bit harder. I think he has a similar sort of kicking game, so he'll know how to neutralize Munoz's attacks. So I'm going to say it's similar to you. I think picking Chito Vera, unanimous decision.
I think two things that are really interesting in this matchup is I really enjoy when someone kicks the kicker. And Mino Vera is going to throw kicks. And Munoz likes to throw low kicks. Low kicks are a great way at disrupting someone's kicking actions. But on the flip side is Munoz is a orthodox fighter. Chito Vera fights both, but he's mostly southpaw, which opens up a rear knee, a left knee from Chito into the exact range of the guy who's known to duck down, and even if he's changing levels for a takedown, to duck into a knee potentially. So those are two things on the technical side of thing that really catch my eye here. But I don't think he's going to finish in there.
Maybe it's having Weidman on this card, but I'm starting to get really worried about the idea of all these kicks being thrown.
I shouldn't say anything. I once had Anderson Silva's checked kick as my screensaver to mess with my friend on my old laptop. That was horrible. It was horrible to unlock my old laptop and people at college would see me. It's a long story. It was for a joke. I need to change it.
Fight number 2. Now, we were supposed to stay in the Bantamweight division for this one. Normally, we like to record this on the Saturday morning, obviously for time restraints. There were a couple of tech issues, so we had to push it back, so we're recording this on the Sunday morning. It's a good thing that we did, because overnight we got the word that Cody Garbrandt had fallen out of his fight up against Mario Bautista, which was supposed to be the fight on this position of the card. Now, Garbrandt was a plus 245 underdog going into this one. Bautista, you could get a minus 305. Now, the UFC are seeking out a replacement for Bautista the face. It's unknown at this point whether or not this fight's going to stay on the card. So, where do you stand personally on the news that Cody Garbrandt has pulled out of this fight? Do you think it's a good move from his part? Do you think it raises maybe some questions about Cody's future in the sport? Where do you personally stand?
For me, I know it was an injury, and I never like to be that guy to put doubt on a guy. I think getting injured is really common, sadly, in the sport. It's really hard going through a training camp, and I always advocate for fighter safety, and going into a fight injured is never a good idea, ever. So I do like the move. I'm glad he didn't just tough it out. Sadly, if you would have told me, hey, he's injured, do you think he's going to pull out? I would have said, no, Cody Garbrandt's way too thick-headed to pull out. He's going to just go, nah, I'm going in there, bro, taking him out, and then getting another neck tattoo probably. But I think, he's getting older. In his last fight, he was showing maturity, something I'm not making a joke when I say that. He was showing maturity, something that we've been wanting to see out of someone as athletically talented and able to pick up new things, such as Cody Garbrandt. So, I was definitely excited to see him fight again, see where, like, how much has he improved further. But it is what it is. I hope he's able to come back. Because I want to see more. It'd be really interesting to see if he got like a crazy Robbie Lawler-esque turnaround in his career. But I don't know. It could be the beginning of the end.
I think there was definite improvements in Cody. I think he's switched training camps. I think he's working with Dewey Cooper now over at, I'm tempted to say Extreme Couture. I think that's where they're at. So I think that was it. And I liked seeing a more diverse sort of portfolio with Cody Garbrandt. Because normally Cody's just known primarily for his boxing, but he was throwing a lot more kicks. He was using his wrestling a lot more. But it was still a nervous performance. And I did get the feeling that once Trevin Jones started to find a little bit of success, which Cody allowed him to do, because Cody was very passive in that third round, there was this slight feeling of, oh God, it's happening again. And he got really defensive in that third round. I managed to pull out the win, and I'd argue save his UFC career. So here's my personal take. I think that if Cody Garbrandt was, let's say, on a 3-4 fight winning streak, he would have gutted it out and tried to take this fight. But bearing in mind that his career in the UFC is still a little bit in question, he's played the safe move. And quite rightly so, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's for the better, I'm definitely really curious as to like where his career goes, because he's not that old. He's only 32, and I mean, like, he has taken a ton of damage in his career. We mentioned the Pedro Munoz fight, tons of shots he took in that fight. TJ Dillashaw in both fights. I can attest, I've covered both of those fights. Ridiculous amount of punishment.
Rob Font.
And TJ Dillashaw, Rob Font blasted him and just couldn't put him away. That was a weird one, because you think, oh, Rob Font, finisher, great power, he's going to put him away. Yeah, he actually couldn't. And Cody Garbrandt, so he showed some things, but Kai Kara-France, a lot of that was the drop down to flyweight. I think that makes your bad chin worse. It's definitely like just a lot easier to be concussed when you're cutting so much weight. So I don't think that helped at all. I don't know. I hope he continues and somehow finds a way back, because when he was like in like the run of it and coming up, he was so exciting to watch, like, rise up. Even though I hated him for beating Dominic Cruz, but I mean, the other thing I think about too is like, I wonder how his career looks if they caught TJ in the first fight for EPO. Like, if at that point they strip him and he fights who?
It'd probably be,
I guess, Marias.
It'd probably be Marias or Cejudo.
Yeah, for 135. I wonder if he avoided the damage from that second fight, how it would have turned out.
Oh, Garbrandt versus the Prime Marlon. What a fight that would have been.
Oh my God. It would have been insane. And crazy thing too about that, TJ Dillashaw, all that EPO, I heard rumors, and this is just a rumor, that he went up to Big Bear to train with like Tito Ortiz, and they had him benching Tito Ortiz's head. It's a dangerous guy. We can't have him, and we can't have a guy like that on a sport. TJ Dillashaw is 5'2", walks around at 130 pounds, soaking wet, and he was benching Tito Ortiz's 900-pound noggin on EPO. Come on.
Have you ever heard about the 12 Trials of Heracles?
Yes, I know them.
Yeah, and there's one of them where like Hercules gets like Atlas the Giant to get the golden apples, and Hercules like holds the world on his shoulders. That's what I'm picturing with TJ holding Tito's head.
So I actually kind of picture Sisyphus moving that mountain all the way uphill, all the way up that boulder all the way up, and Tito's head constantly rolls back down, just constantly.
INC Live, the only MMA podcast to mix pro wrestling and Greek mythology.
I played a lot of the game Hades. I know my Greek mythology.
So one more thing before we move on to our next topic. So the UFC's plan is to try and keep Mario Bautista on the card. Which way do you think the UFC are going to go with this? Do you think they're going to try and get someone at an equal level to Cody Garbrandt? Do you think it's going to be like a flyweight moving up? Do you think that maybe they're going to try and get a guy on the regional scene? Like Boston's known for its like high-level bantamweight fighters. Which way do you think the UFC are going to lean with this?
Oh my god, I just thought of the funniest idea. I don't think this is going to happen, but hear me out. Out comes Chris Matinho, Mario Batista. No, I think Chris Matinho is from that area. I think
yeah.
I actually don't know. I could see a flyweight moving up. There's probably some really cool ideas you could match up with him because Mario Batista's really fun on the ground. Oh man, could you imagine Brandon Royval moving up in weight to take on Max Batista?
Royval's not going to do anything to risk. He's not going to do anything to risk that title fight.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But God, the grappling exchanges would be so much fun. Oh man.
One rumor I've heard is Timur Valiev, because he was on the Ultimate Fighter this season, had that close fight with Brad Katona. A lot of people believe that Valiev could have possibly won that fight, so I think maybe he gets rewarded with getting back into the UFC by taking this on short notice.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That's one of the few fights I've watched. I've watched all the Austin Hubbard fights, and I watched the Kurt Hollabaugh fight recently. And, but that fight I watched because everyone told me how awesome it was. Yeah. That fight was awesome. I thought Timur won. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm so down for that. That sounds great. That fight was great.
So fight number 3, speaking of short notice replacements, it brings us on to our welterweight encounter. Ian Garry remains in action here. He is the number 13 seed. Originally, he was supposed to fight Jeff Neal, which I think would have been an absolute belter of a fight. Unfortunately, Neal has to pull out through injury. Ian Garry is still going to face a Neal, but it's Neil Magny, the number 11 seed. Not many people are giving Magny a chance in this one, however. Plus 350 compared to a minus 375 for Ian Garry. Now, Ian Garry has been hyped by the UFC as the next big thing for a long, long time. And there's a couple of factors in that. Obviously, he trains at Killcliff now, which has been this sort of hub for like top-level welterweight fighters. He's also got the Irish backing, so you link it into Conor. A lot of people trying to sort of bill him as the next Conor McGregor. He's leaned into it as well with some of his behaviour. Admittedly, I was a little bit slow to get onto the Ian Garry hype train, but that performance against Daniel Rodriguez made me think, you know what, those people who bigged him up, they may very well be right.
Yeah, that was kind of an eye-opener for me. I didn't expect him to beat Daniel Rodriguez like that, especially. Part of me thinks he's still a little overhyped, but he has a great camp behind him, and it's really hard to like. He trains with like Andre Fiallo, Vicente Luque, Kamaru Usman,
Gilbert Burns,
Rockhold. Oh yeah, Burns is over there too. Isn't Shavkat there as well?
I think he might be.
I think Shavkat's there, and yeah, there's a lot of guys, that train over there. And I would, he shows that he has the power. I want to see his grappling because I'll be honest.
Yes.
When I hear you have Machado in your name, my brain is like, okay, show us, like because you're a Machado. Like, what's going on?
I think that's because his wife's Machado.
Yeah, his wife's a Machado. Yeah.
It's like Travis Brown isn't going to become like a world-class judoka now.
Yeah, it's like AJ Lee said, and I think that's the second previous show in a row I've made that reference, so I need to think of another one. But hey, like it's just like AJ Lee said. But when he took her name like that, I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna pop out, black belted up, and start taking some arms with him, and he hasn't really done that. He's been taking heads instead, which. I don't really like him, so I don't like that either. But he has promise. He's doing what the UFC likes. The UFC is a fight promotion, but they don't really like promoting fighters. They like when you do the work for
Yeah.
them. And he's doing the work for them. So, and they love that. They love the Irish connection. They love the fact that he's a finisher. Um, they're even willing to ignore the fact that he was getting smoked in his debut before the knockout. So, I mean, hey, that debut is a lot of the reason why I'm still a little cold on him but he has improved massively since then.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know he was poking the bear against Jeff Neal pretty hard, and I thought that was a recipe for disaster for him because Jeff Neal is not one of the guys I would want to make angry in a dark alley. But he's instead going to fight the guy who won the Battle of the Neals between them two. So.
Yes, that's an interesting sort of wrinkle there, because like a lot of people, and admittedly, Jeff Neal has got a lot better since the first Neal Magny fight,
Yes.
but it is an interesting wrinkle that he was supposed to fight Jeff, and now he's fighting Magny, and Magny technically should be the better fighter, but MMA math doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Neal Magny has always been known as the sort of, I think it would be a bit harsh to call him a gatekeeper, but he is that sort of guy who, very similar to Pedro Munoz, you beat him, it does mean something. I've got a list here of some of the losses that Neal Magny's had in his career. Damian Maia, Lorenz Larkin, Ardier, Ponzinibbio, Michael Chiesa, Shafkat, and Gilbert Burns.
Once again, there's not a lot of these names. It was a Pedro Munoz. We said who's beat him. These are a lot of great names. I think Lorenz Larkin's an incredibly underrated fighter. So there's no shame in that. Damian Maia was at peak Maia levels. I think the only real two ones you're going back to 2013, and it's Seth Baczynski. Everything else has been yeah, that's really legit. Those guys are awesome. Those guys are great. His most recent loss was Gilbert Burns in a fight that you and me were both saying, wait, why are you making this fight? This doesn't make any sense. And then Gilbert Burns won because Gilbert Burns is the man. I don't think it's his fault that there's a bad matchmaking, and even then he's still winning fights. He just beat Phil Rowe,
who was on a good winning streak.
Yeah, he's really good. Neal Magny's awesome.
Yeah. He
has a bad reputation for that gatekeeper status, but that's just because he wins so many fights. They have to match him against someone who's the man.
What would you say are Neal Magny's best weapons? Because one of the big criticisms that some people have had with him is, yes, he's a good all-around fighter, but it's almost to a fault. If you're a striker, Neal Magny is content to say, okay, so you want to strike, I'm happy to do that. You want to grapple, I'm happy to do that. He doesn't sort of push his game onto people. So I expect Ian Gary to be the guy who's trying to dictate the type of fight that he has, and we're gonna see whether or not the Neal Magny can hold his own in the striking.
Yeah, I feel like his game is cardio, and that doesn't sadly have a style. He wears you out and just drains you of all your energy. And now he's healthy, and now he's the one that's in good shape, and he's the one that's going to murder you and beat you up. I always think of the Hector Lombard comeback he had, which was incredible.
Good win as well. Lombard had a lot of fanfare at the time.
Yeah, still a very good win for Lombard at the time, and or Lombard was still very highly touted at the time. And so, I'm trying to think of how to put it. He just wants to drain you of all your juice. He has a good amount of. He's willing. You know what? I use this as a verb, and I usually use it in a mocking sense, but he's a great Holly Homer, and he's great at it, and he's active sometimes in there. He sometimes sheds that tag and makes it a full-on clinching against the cage, dirty boxing with some great knees, and that builds up lactic acid. That wears you out, and he has no shame and no problem doing it, as he shouldn't. He shouldn't have any problem doing it. As much as I make fun of it, who am I to judge that?
As long as you're not doing it in Apex main events, it's okay.
Yeah, as long as I don't have to recap it in a 5-round fight, I'm. don't call yourself a knockout artist and go out there hauling home in 25 people in a row. That's all I'm saying.
Like, how many people online? Like, I know Holly has a big fan base, and if you are a Holly Holm fan, I do apologize. But I remember the night after the Mayra Bueno Silva match, and there was a lot of people, and the reaction, it wasn't so much that they were happy Bueno Silva won, it was, yes, no more Holly main events.
That was at least my reaction. And it was fantastic. I felt like celebrating because I was openly dreading it in the previous week recap videos and going, we're getting close to this fight. This is what I got to deal with in my birth month of June. Okay, great. Thank you, UFC. And then she loses. And oh man, I don't know. It just felt wonderful. It was a wonderful moment for me. And nothing is going to take that away. I want to retro review that card.
Patreon donation, and we will do it.
Yeah, or you know what? Here's a better one. Can we retro review Amanda Nunes and her for that head kick? Oh, it was beautiful.
That was Masvidal versus Askren as well.
Oh, was that card?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to do that card because that has one of the longest fights of all time in it.
I'm tempted to say as well. I believe we did have that one as one of the nominees when we did the International Fight Weeks. 189 one.
Yeah, which is a good one.
Yeah. Trying to get back on topic here. One thing I am interested to see with Neil Magny is, on the whole, Ian Gary has had a big length and reach advantage over most of his opponents that he's faced in the UFC. I am interested to see how he handles somebody that matches him in that realm, because Neil Magny is a tall, lanky guy in his own right. And if there are some issues I have seen with Ian Gary, I think his defense is still a little bit suspect. He falls into this trap, which I think a lot of people his size do, tall man defense. And we have seen some fighters exploit that at times.
Just like the lean back, and he's fighting against a guy who has himself fallen to the tall man defense and knows not to do that anymore. Ian Gary feels hittable to me.
Yeah,
it's like a big kind of a gripe I have with him is he seems really hittable, and this isn't a guy that's going to punish you for that. That was Jeff Neal. That was the guy who was really going to punish you for being hittable. But this guy, hey, it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt way more in round 3 if he gets there, because you're tired now. That's kind of the problem with fighting a guy like him. The big thing is it's like a 2 week notice thing. I think this matchup is really interesting on full training camps, but like we said earlier, injuries are the name of the game, sadly, in our sport. It's just kind of how it is. So
also a big X factor is that 2 of Neil Magny's losses have come against Shavkat and Gilbert Burns, training partners of Ian Gary. Do you think that's going to be a factor?
I think probably. I think if they're confident, because how both those guys beat him is they submitted him by taking him down and just being better grapplers than him. That's it's like you were saying earlier. He's so well rounded to a fault that when he takes on the guys who are world class in certain aspects of the sport, they just outclass him. And because he's so willing to go there when he should have been fighting for his life to avoid the ground against a guy like Gilbert Burns, he was a little bit more willing. And just kind of is what it is. He was trying to get Ponzinibbio down, but he just took so many low kicks. He was willing to strike with him for too long that by the time he was like, I probably shouldn't do this anymore, it's too late. So I think that will play into a factor, though. I think if he's as confident on the ground as he acts like he is, they're probably gonna be like, all right, just take him down, and this is how he likes to grapple. He likes to go here, here, here. This is a move he likes doing. He tried this against me. I could definitely see that playing a factor.
Ian Gary, big favourite going into this fight. Do you think he's going to win? And if so, do you think it's going to be by finish?
I think he finishes him, sadly. I think he most likely decisions him, but I don't know. I think he's going to... If he finishes him, I don't think he'll do it with punches. I think only one guy's put him out with punches. That's Ponzinibbio.
I think that was low kicks, wasn't it?
No, he blasted him with a right hand and made him face plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. he clobbered him. That was back when Ponzi was
That was
the
prime
man.
Ponzi.
Oh man, he should have fought for the title. Honestly, it just pains me watching him now, but that's what happens when you tear your knee completely apart 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
But I think this fight is super interesting on a full training camp. Sadly, we're not getting it, and that hurts Neil Magny's game plan of taking away your cardio and utilizing that to the fullest.
I'm going to be picking Gary to win this one. I think Magny's going to do enough to survive, though. I'm going to pick a unanimous decision. I think Ian Gary is good enough to maybe be like a top 6, top 7 guy. Do I see him beating, say, the Bilal Muhammads of the world? I don't. I think there's a ceiling to him. And admittedly, he is getting better. We've only got like 12 fights in his career, so he can get a lot better. At this moment in time, though, I just think he's a step below the elites.
I think a really fun matchup, maybe because I don't like Ian Gary. Maybe I'm biased. But a guy who I think is top 3 and no one is willing to admit it and is having trouble getting a fight right now is Shavkat. Oh, they're the same camp.
Same camp.
Man, I think Shavkat is the real deal.
Shavkat's good. He is so good.
Yeah, as much as you don't like Hamzat, I thought Hamzat was a top 2 guy at welterweight. If he could make weight, obviously struggles. But I thought Shavkat was right there, just as good as him, and if not a higher ceiling. I think Shavkat had the higher ceiling of the two. But Shavkat is insane. Doesn't get enough credit for how good he is.
Yeah, main reason I hate Hamzat is just he's an idiot. He's just like a meathead. Like
he's a mega douche.
The fighter is very impressive, but he's careless, and I just don't like him behind the scenes.
Yeah, I love watching the fighter. I don't necessarily like the guy because he comes across. I think we're far enough into this. I don't think this is a bad word by YouTube standards, but I think he's douchey. I think he's a douchebag.
Yeah.
As the late great, rest in peace, Iron Sheik would say, it's douchebag. It's douchebag.
Yeah, he used to say a lot worse than that, though, mind you.
Oh yeah, that's the best I got. It's the best I can say here. Oh, Sheiky baby, I miss him so much.
So do I. Like, honestly, I think it was like his management. I don't think he did it himself. His Twitter feed was so fun to follow.
It was one of my favorites all the time because I only read it in his voice. So it'd be like, I hope everybody has the wonderful day except for that mother jabroni Hulk Hogan. Like it's great, fantastic. Also, one of the few guys, if MMA was a thing in his era, would have probably been world champion.
Oh, he was a world-class amateur wrestler.
Yeah, one of the best amateur wrestlers of all time, and an absolute monster of a man physically. He would have been what people say Kurt Angle could have been, I think, easily.
So now we move on to our core main event, and the strawweight title is on the line. Zhang Weili, our defending champion, is taking on the number 5 seed Amanda Lemos. So the betting odds for this one have Weili as a minus 330 favourite. So fairly comfortable up against Lemos. A lot of people think it should be fairly straightforward for Weili to win this one. That being said, these betting odds are a lot closer than what the general public are thinking. We run the opinion polls on the main channel, and at the moment, just 4% of people are picking Amanda Lemos to win this fight. Now, to put that into perspective, 6% of people gave Jessica Rai a chance to beat Valentina Shevchenko, which, bearing in mind the two fighters, and bearing in mind what Amanda Lemos has done in her UFC career, I don't know about you, I think that's very harsh.
That's super harsh. I think Amanda Lemos doesn't have a nickname, but with Jessica I retiring, Evil is open. Amanda Lemos could do Here We Go Evil, Here We Go. I'm just saying, open workouts, it's open, free. It's free, but that's super harsh. Especially, outside of the Jessica Andrade fight, which is a little awkward. She was smashing people. As you and me talked about this before the show, how impressive she was before that fight.
Do you think that the Andrade fight has been a factor in people sort of dismissing her as a threat. Bearing in mind what Andrade has done since then, obviously she's had the bad run of form, and the fact it was just so recent ago. And people, instead of seeing Lemos as this like sort of big knockout artist who could catch Weili early, they're instead thinking, that girl who lost with the standing choke, she's going to be Weili.
Kind of. It affects me, admittingly. And I'm saying that as someone who watched live and recapped her next two fights last year after that, which she won both by finish against I'm single now, so my future wife, potentially, Michelle Watterson, and Marina Rodriguez. So, I mean, it's... like it admittingly affects my perception of her, even though I have to actually remind myself, no, Marina Rodriguez should have fought for a title.
Yes.
And she finished her. Like, she was beating her comfortably before the finish. I remember the finish being a little wonky, but like she was beating her comfortably before that. So, I mean, she's a legit she's a legit title challenger in my mind, but I will admit, like, how my brain sees it, I go, oh, like, she got put in that like really awkward standing arm triangle and just kind of let it happen. It was like kind of awkward. It was really awkward. But I mean, I don't know. It feels a little harsh, but I mean, spoiler alerts, I am picking Weili Zhang to win comfortably. But
yeah, not 4% comfortably though.
Yeah, like 5. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's crazy,
And I think the other big factor it's had as well is not only are people sort of like dismissing Lemos as a threat, I am seeing zero buzz for this fight. Like, during the fight nights, they'll do like the on-screen graphics and they'll say like Sterling versus O'Malley, 2 weeks time, order the pay-per-view here. They're not even mentioning Weili versus Lemos on those graphics. It's almost sort of like treated as an afterthought. And I think that's a factor for it, that people are sort of dismissing Lemos as a threat. But also as well, Weili just hasn't been active as a champion.
Not really. Nah, not really. Because her last fight was Carla, which was in November.
Yeah, and she didn't take much damage in that fight. Carl is not that kind of fighter either.
No, and like she beat her pretty comfortably. And I mean, unless there was like something going on with like maybe a potential injury or anything like that, you would kind of expect her to fight in the spring, maybe early parts of the summer, not here in August. It's kind of odd.
Yeah, I've actually got a stat here which surprised me. So, Zhang Weili made her UFC debut in, I believe it was 2018. It was on that Dillashaw versus Garbrandt 2 card. So in her first, from 2018, or sort of like August 2018 through to the end of 2019, she fought 4 times. Since then, she has fought 5 times. So that's 5 times in 3 years when it was 4 times in 12 months. So she has become much more inactive since she got the belt.
Wow. That's not good. But then again, I mean, like, she's, despite her only being in, I would say, like, I don't want to say the public eye, but in like the main focus of her division's kind of spotlight, you could say she was in there like in her early 30s. And she's 33 years old. Maybe she's like taking it slower so she can have this career that spans into her 40s. I don't see that too much as a problem, but when you're champion, I feel like you kind of need to be a little bit more active. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm personally think you should maybe try and defend your belt twice a year.
Yeah. As much as I want you, as much as I preach fighter safety, I totally understand taking things slow because it's hard. It's a really hard sport. But I, in a perfect world, I think 2 times a year is perfect.
Yeah, because I think the big issue as well is that I think the strawweight needs to sort of revive itself. It was relying a little bit on sort of like the 5 queens era. And since then, of course, Karl is pregnant. Congratulations to her. Rose is going to flyweight. Joanna's retired. It needs to replenish and sort of try and bring some sort of fresh names to the fore and challenging for belts. And because we've got a little bit of a logjam starting the strawweight right now, because the Lemos fight, for whatever reason, has been pushed back into August. And you've got Yan Xiaonan and Tatiana Suarez, who both have strong claims for a title fight. And they're either going to have to fight each other, which is going to kill off a contender, or they're going to have to wait their turn. And if Weili's fighting at the same sort of rate she has been, like, Suarez is going to be out of her prime by the time she fights, because she's, what, 33 now?
Yeah. She lost like 3-4 years of her prime already.
Yeah.
So, sad.
And it's such a shame as well, because, like, don't get me wrong, Zhang Weili, very entertaining fighter.
Incredibly entertaining.
Yeah. Like, you always have these sort of reputations of the sort of... And it's something that really... And no offense to Carla, I'm sort of, like, taking her out the equation. I do love Carla, but she wasn't really the most exciting fighter in the world. But there has been this tradition of the strawweight queen being an action star. Like, Joanna had that, Rose had that, and then, of course, Weili's taking it over now. And Weili fits that bill perfectly. She's very, very fun to watch.
Yeah. She's super fun to watch. And I like Carla as well, too, but I'm still not going to forgive her for making me watch that Rose 2 fight. I'd rather watch Aldrich Viana.
Honestly,
I'd set it, yeah.
As one of the few people who picked Carla to win that fight, that's the one positive I'll take from it. I told people Carla was going to win that.
I think I'd rather watch Ngannou Derek Lewis, because at least that's 3 rounds. It'll be over quick.
And the commentary's hilarious.
Oh my god, the commentary is so funny. I will say this, though. I climbed very high in Hearthstone watching that fight on my phone, on this mobile game on my phone. That's a joke. I had to take notes. I watched it 3 times the night of for the recap video, and I will never forget it. I love the fans. I don't know if you can tell.
Yes.
But yeah, Zhang Weili is incredibly exciting. I'll say this. You and me have talked about it, how it's always a great mark of finding out how much someone likes the sport when you ask them their favorite fighter. I think that also applies to people who watch MMA at a decent clip. But, like, how much do you watch women's MMA? Nothing against women's MMA. It's just doesn't have the history and not as popular overall as, like, men's. And so I think it's really interesting when someone gives me an answer of, like, oh, who's your favorite female fighter? Like, who's your favorite? Like, if they 9 times out of 10, I usually get, oh, I don't know. I like that one chick that had their hair cut. Like, okay, thanks. Yeah, Rose. Everyone loves Rose. But I think it's really interesting when someone goes, Jessica Andrade, I hear a good amount too, because she's got knockout power. But more often than not, I hear Zhang Weili because of her all-action style and how she's kind of improved from being this very rudimentary kickboxer to, like, oh, hey, she can go, like, really, really go, as we saw in the Joanna 1 fight. And then, hey, turns out she's a really good wrestler and probably should have won that decision against Rose, and then she had the spinning back fist. And then look, now she's tapping out Carla, who's a good grappler. And, like, that really weird crucifix from the bottom was really weird. But she got her, got her and caught her. Like, it's really fun seeing her improve steadily and become more exciting. I just wish we could see her fight more. She fought 2 times last year. That's a blessing. Maybe if she wins this, maybe she shows up on that December card. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
well, I certainly hope so. Like, just for the entertainment factor. You did touch on something, in my opinion, though, which is going to be the big X factor in this fight. As good as Weili is as a striker, the grappling has improved tenfold since working with Henry Cejudo. And bearing in mind some of the weaknesses that Amanda Lemos has faced in her UFC career, I think that's going to be a big pathway to victory. I think she's going to go very grappling heavy in this fight.
Yeah. She's been working out with this guy named Josh Hinger as well, who is a very high level black belt under Andre Galvo, who was like a Strikeforce vet and stuff like that. He's like a bronze medalist at like ADCC and stuff like that. She's been working with him. I've seen her on. Shout out to another YouTuber, Lawrence Kinshin. He likes striking videos, especially Muay Thai. Great place. But he helped Weili Zhang meet up with, I think it was Sanchai, like incredibly famous, highly touted, one of the best Muay Thai strikers ever, and they worked together for, I think it was the second, maybe the second or first Joanna fight. And so she's traveling around, going and fighting, like training with all these different coaches, and I think that's fantastic. I think that's really cool. As someone who would be really happy to, be like, oh, I got the best gym in the world, I don't have to go anywhere. I think it's also really cool when you go and meet these specialists and try and take their kind of thing. Like when she had Cejudo in her camp. Cejudo, I remember her saying, I think, because she's like practicing her English. I remember her saying in an interview, it was really awkward to try and do some of the moves Cejudo did because he used a lot of leverage from his massive head, and she didn't have that. She didn't have that benefit. But hey, you know what? She used it incredibly well against. I finally lost it there against Rose Namajunas, and I thought she won that fight. I thought she won that fight pretty good, But I think I'm kind of thinking the same boat. I think she just has more ways to win, and that's a big thing for me. When you're really good at winning one way, that's fantastic. But she has a lot more ways to win, I feel like.
Especially now.
Yeah.
If I did have to point to some weaknesses when it comes to Zhang Weili, because every fighter has them, no fighter is perfect. I think there's really two big ones to stand out for me. I don't think she's the fastest starter. I know people are going to point to the Andrade fight and the early finish, but that was an anomaly. Andrade was incredibly careless going into that one. But we saw her get finished early against Rose in the first fight. And even in her debut, Danielle Taylor, who's never been known as a power puncher, rocked her big time at the end of that round. So I do think she does take a little bit of time to try and sort of work out her opponents. And that plays into Amanda Lemos. In my opinion, if you're looking for the most dangerous round one fighter in this weight class, I'd argue it's her.
Yeah, she is just comes out guns a-blazing and has a lot of finishes to back that up. A lot of a good variety too. She has hard punches, but she got a pretty good flying knee. She hits like a truck. She hits very, very hard. This could be kind of if she has a slow start, Lemos could pull off that upset and make 4% of our viewers look like super geniuses.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's for me,
can of Coke to all 4% of them at that point.
Or a kind of iron brewed from the girdles of Scotland.
Yeah, I sadly have a Red Bull here. It's not very good.
Yeah, it does give you wings though.
It does,
Yeah.
It gives you wings. I have to finish it first, though.
You can tell we're searching for product placement.
Yeah, I'll take anything. Like this Charlie's cheesesteaks I got last night.
So for me, two big weapons when it comes to Lemos. I think it's her counter right. So if Weili is willing to try and come forward, I mean, that's a big weapon that Lemos can utilize. And the power left as well. So when she's going forward, it's the left hand which really takes prominence. I'm also interested in how Lemos would handle herself on the ground, because I think most people quite rightly expect Zhang Weili to sort of be in control once it gets there. However, this is a girl who submitted Michelle Watson, did it with, I think, a guillotine. So no slouch on the ground either. So it would be interesting to see how she handles herself there.
She likes her power submissions, I've noticed in the ground in my research leading up to it, because she's very strong. And Zhang Weili also likes to use her incredible low center of gravity and great strength. I guess the differences would be Volkanovski was a super big guy, but he has a lot of that core strength like you saw against Makhachev. And Zhang Weili's kind of similar in the shorter frame, low center of gravity, and then great core center of gravity strength, I guess you could describe it as. But Amanda Lemos really likes her guillotine. It was good. It was a solid technique, but she was able to put that that's like that stank strength. Like I guess to be able to describe it, it was pretty awesome. And if Zhang Weili, she has like it's like Sean. I'm not saying I'm not. I feel bad, but I'm not comparing her to Sean Shirk, who did not have a neck, but that guy was impossible to choke out. Sean Shirk had no neck. Zhang Weili, how she's kind of built, her neck isn't you know. It's like Brandon Royval has like a long neck. You mentioned him earlier. It seems like it's easy if you take his back to get something in. But Zhang Weili, it's going to be a little harder to choke her, I would imagine. That said, I would not leave your neck out there because even if she gets it on the chin, Amanda Lemos is very strong. She could crank it and just make it into like a guillotine is more of a neck crank already, but just make it that much more painful as like a full on neck crank, and it could be pretty bad. So be very careful at leaving the head out if it is attack like a takedown in style engagement. That is something Lemos could do, but I'm really curious to see how the body kicks of Weili Zhang work against Lemos.
Yeah,
like is Lemos going to try to counter with a longer right hand? That is one of her power shots, because Weili Zhang loves the lead leg kicks, like kicks with her lead leg to like round kick to the body to the inside low kick. That does leave you a little bit open. It's a little bit harder to put your lead shoulder in the way to block the right hand coming in, especially if you're on one foot. So,
and it's how she starts a lot of the combinations, low kicks.
Yeah, she'll that's what made her and the Joanna fight so great. Is Weili Zhang will engage with a low kick, throw a punch combination, and then Joanna's firing back with a punch combination that ends in a low kick. So the entire exchange starts and ends with the low kick, the alpha and omega.
I would be interested to see as well. We sort of touched on the ground game there and something like Lemos' potential submission threats. I would be interested to see if Lemos was able to reverse position, because one thing I did notice about Weili, we talk about how good her grappling has gotten. Mm-hmm. But I did think when she fought Rose the second time, and this in my opinion, I disagree with you. I think Rose did enough to win the second fight. And the big reason was that when Rose was on the bottom, she was doing a lot more to try and stay active. She was throwing up submission attempts. She was trying to scramble, trying to sort of switch and reverse position. Weili seemed a lot more content to stay on the ground when the roles were reversed. So I do think she might just be a little bit uncomfortable there. So it would be interesting to see if Lemos was able to reverse position, how Weili would handle that. Okay. I think another big factor as well, when it comes to Amanda Lemos, we talk about all the power she carries early in a fight. But with that extra power comes conditioning issues. We saw that against Michelle Waterson. It didn't really show up against Marina Rodriguez. She managed to get that done in the third round. But if she does go to the fourth or fifth round, is she going to be able to carry that power late on?
Yeah, that's a big thing too. Especially against someone who has such a good chin and Weili Zhang. Like everyone loves to bring up the Rose knockout. That kick's knocking out anybody.
Yeah.
The best chin in MMA history. That kick from in like that whole, to make it fair and everything, that kick's probably knocking out your Dan Hendersons, your Pedro Munoz's and stuff like that, Cheeto Vera's. That kick's probably knocking them out too. It just happens. Everyone's clock gets caught at some point. But her chin is insane from both Joanna fights. Both of them are just blasting each other constantly. And Joanna she's more like death by like 1,000 punches, but she has some pop, and she just took all of it and kept going. So, and it's definitely interesting. I think Weili Zhang's chin is very good though, and so if she's able to survive into the later rounds, her cardio is much better than Amanda Lemos potentially. So I think that's going to be a factor as well.
I know we sort of gave out a little bit for people not giving Lemos a chance. And I stand by that. I think 4% is not doing her a real disservice. But I do think Weili's going to win this one. I think she has more weapons. I think she has the grappling advantage. And I think she has the conditioning. So I'm going to say Zhang Weili, fourth round, it's going to be sort of ground and pound an exhausted Lemos just succumbs, and then Big John, or not Big John, he retired years ago, like Herb Dean or Mark Goddard steps in and stops the fight.
Big John's busy talking about random fishing trips during main events and Bellator, not talking about the fight. But but yeah, I mean, I will say, for the record, I can understand it being 4% now that I think about it, because sometimes you'll see a movie that, like, it's okay and it's not bad, it's fine, but it's got like a random 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. That doesn't mean it's like one of the best movies ever. It just means that 99% of people thought it was okay, it wasn't bad, at least. So maybe it's like a situation like that when you're picking fights, where it's like, there's a lot lost in translation, I guess you could say. It's like, oh no, this fight's pretty close, but I think Weili Zhang's gonna win. You could be 96% say that. That said, yeah, Weili Zhang. I have her winning by. I think she's just improved so much that I think it's a comfortable decision.
And one final question before we move on to our main event. Assuming Zhang Weili wins this one, who gets the next title fight? Suarez or Yan? Because on
I think Yan.
There you go. You interrupted my answer there, because I was going to say, because you've either got the All China Super Fight, which I know the UFC are going to love, so they're going to play the business card, or do you strike the iron when it's hot and give Suarez that opportunity to be great before it's too late?
Suarez deserves it more, I think. Well, no, maybe not. I don't know. I think Suarez earned it a long time ago, and it sucks that she's probably going to wait a year and a half for this title shot. But
or do you, sort of a wild card answer here, I'm going to play a little bit of a Brian Campbell here, do you run the Rose Trilogy fight back? Because that is the albatross around Weili's neck. As things stand right now, Rose is the Dennis Hallman to her Matthews. It's always going to be something that people are going to bring up.
There's a very obvious joke there with Dennis Hallman being brought up, and I'm mature enough to avoid it.
Is it about the Speedo?
Yes, it is. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want Pat Barry low kicking me. So, especially if Pat Barry shows up, I'm going to have some questions. Anyways, I mean, Rose is actually fighting Manon Farrell.
She is, yes. I don't think it's going to end well for Rose, so I'm picking Furo to win that one.
Sadly, me too. I think she was perfect size for 115, not 125. Yeah, I don't know how 125 is going to be. 125 is awesome, though, now.
It's a fantastic weight class right now.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We have a respectable champion for the first time. And
Are you getting nervous about September, because we made a big deal about, like, the Mexican takeover, and, like, Grasso's the only one left now.
I'm terrified, for being honest. I've talked so much trash that, like, I know it's gonna bite me in the ass. And I know the people that watch the preview shows that hear me make all these jokes. They know I'm 99% joking. So,
well, I hope so.
It's all in good fun.
Yeah,
I'm 99% joking, but I do think Alexa Grasso is the first respectable champion in a while.
I was going to bring this up at the end of the show, but I'll put it here right now. Normally, we only do the preview shows for the pay-per-views. But bearing in mind that Grasso versus Shevchenko is going to be a free TV card, and it's a title fight, how would you be up for covering that one as a preview show?
I'd be down for it.
Yeah.
Didn't we lose the co-main event, though?
Yeah, Shavkat versus Kelvin.
That's heartbreaking, man.
Yeah.
That's so heartbreaking. But maybe they'll find someone for Shavkat.
Well, let's certainly hope so, yeah, because I've had a look at the card. It's not the best, I have to be honest.
Maybe we could just do it like what we did back in the day, where we just talk about the main event.
Probably. Tell you what, we'll put it to the public, and you guys post in the comments to see what kind of preview show you would like us to cover when it gets around to that point. But me and George certainly seem up for the idea of covering Grasso versus Shevchenko as a preview. So, while Joe sort of like looks up the fight card or gets his notes prepped together, we're going to talk about the main event of the evening. So, the Bantamweight title is on the line. Aljamain Sterling will be defending his belt for the 4th time up against the number 2 seed Sean O'Malley. Now, Aljo is a minus 265 favourite for this one. You can get O'Malley in at plus 215. Now, it's fair to say that Aljamain Sterling is not the most popular champion when it comes to the UFC currently. And a lot of that stems from what happened against Piotr Jan, and a lot of people maybe still won't forgive him for that. Do you feel the tide is turning a little bit? Is there, maybe not so much that he's like a big fan favourite, but more of a case of, I might not like the guy, but I respect what he's doing?
I feel like it's gone from vitriolic hate and dislike for him to indifference, is what I'll say. I still feel like he's massively underrated. I feel like he's incredibly underrated by not just the fans, but the promotion as well. He's incredible. Like, I know a lot of people are like, also, I remember hearing when he beat Cejudo, or when he was about to fight Cejudo, people were like, oh, Cejudo's going to expose him. And if he wins, oh, well, I mean, he fought a one-armed Dillashaw who shouldn't have beat Sanhagen, and now he's fighting now he's fighting Henry Cejudo, whose head has gained 20 pounds since he last fought in the octagon. Ugh. But nah, I mean, like, I think he's incredibly underrated, and I feel like it's the hate is gone. Now it's indifference, and it's almost like a real fresh slate. And if he wins this fight, I think he's actually going to gain a lot of fans. Personally,
I'm a little bit skeptical in that regard, though. I think that a lot of people sort of it can happen, and it has happened to certain fights. But I think a lot of people put weight on the idea of, I shot Jesse James, so that makes me Jesse James. I think it can happen in some cases. Like Khabib got that from Conor. Dustin got that from beating Conor. I think Dustin especially got a massive boost in popularity. I don't think it's going to be that case with Sean O'Malley. But then again, I don't think I'm the kind of fan that would take to Sean O'Malley anyway. He's very much the sort of the TikTok and the Instagram sort of generation. And I'm a washed up POS, so... what does my opinion matter?
I personally I don't really understand his fandom. It reminds me of like in Arrested Development when Michael Cera was dating that chick Anne, and he'd be like, "Yeah, it's my girlfriend Anne," and Jason Bateman would go, "Her?" It's like kind of how I feel like when people go, "I Sugar Show Sean O'Malley," and then they hit their vape. I vape too, but it's to quit smoking cigarettes, not for fashionable reasons. And they hit their little pin, and I just go, him? That guy? The guy who likes like mumble rappers? And I don't know. I don't know. It's just not maybe I'm too old. I don't know.
Yeah, there's an entire different generation which just I'm not part of. Like I don't get like the Paul brothers' popularity, or like the Island Boys, or
yeah, I don't understand any of that. I'm already not a guy who goes to raves. I have a lot of friends who love raves and like music like that, and I'm just like, nah, I think I'm gonna sit at home and listen to the Hollies. How about that?
Oh, the Hollies were class.
Oh, I randomly was listening to them today during my smoke break before the show.
Long cool woman in a black dress. Brilliant.
Oh, my dream. Even though she'd be taller than me at 5'9", or 5'9". She's not 5'9". She's 5'9". But yeah, fantastic band. But yeah, I think I also feel like there is a good amount of Sean O'Malley haters out there. And it would people. I feel like that would also really help. You know, I don't know if that would be necessarily a. It might be like a "Who Shot Jesse James" moment, but I don't know. That's my cousin, actually, Jesse James.
Honestly, you said his name?
Yeah, Jesse James is my cousin. The old outlaw from back in the day. He's like a fifth cousin of mine. Like, he's in our family tree. It's kind of funny.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah.
The one thing that Sean's popularity has done, though, is it's compensated for his claim to a title fight in terms of meritocracy, because that's the big elephant in the room. Should he be fighting for this title, bearing in mind that his only major win is a match against Piotr Jan, which the majority of the public think he lost?
No. No. I watched that fight a couple times this week. I still think he lost that fight. I think it's a pretty big time robbery. He's winning on the feet, and he is hurting Petr Yan, but he isn't controlling Petr Yan. I will say, very funny that Petr Yan, who had the close second fight with Aljo, and Petr fans were saying it's all about the damage, and then against Yan, it was like it's all about, or against O'Malley, it's all about control now. I will show like, hey, I thought Aljo won because of the control time. He was controlling the fight. He was clearly winning the fight for me. I think Yan won against O'Malley because of the control time. I thought he was clearly winning the fight with his grappling. That's his only ranked opponent. He's beat.
Yeah.
He was getting tuned up by Pedro Munoz with the low kicks. He clearly had no idea what to do against the low kicks. Julian Paiva, it just isn't on the level. I don't understand like necessarily that pick. I mean, he had the great fight against Kyler Murray, but or not Kyler Murray, but Kyler Phillips. Yeah, great fight.
I was just looking through here. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and you can post it in the comments if you do, because trust me, everyone does when it comes to these preview shows. I think I'm right in saying if you take away Yan and Munoz, all of Sean O'Malley's opponents are no longer in the UFC.
Except Cheeto.
Except Cheeto, obviously, but that was obviously a fight he lost.
But that fight, O'Malley don't count that, bro.
Someone actually changed his Wikipedia page, then made it like 18 and low because Cheeto O'Malley wouldn't accept the loss.
Yeah, I have that saved in my phone. I also have rest in peace the late great Kobe Bryant's MMA record when someone added that into Wikipedia because Kobe Bryant got knocked down by this guy in the NBA one time during a brawl. So someone added Kobe Bryant had the MMA fight that said he got knocked out in Madison Square Garden. But it's I don't know if he necessarily earned it. I thought Corey Sandhagen. I thought you could have done Cheeto Vera. Before their fight, of course. But no, here we are. Here comes the Sugar Show. It's a lot of it is because, like we were saying with Ian Gary, this is a guy the UFC doesn't have to waste their efforts on promoting. They don't want to do their job. They want a guy who does their job for them.
Yes.
And here's the Sugar Show. Here's Sean O'Malley. I mean, I'm of the firm belief that a fighter's job is to make weight, don't do steroids or cheat, and show up to fight and win. That's their job. Losing is part of the job too, but it's better to win, obviously. I don't think promoting is part of their job at all. And yet here we are.
So a lot of people online are framing this one as striker versus grappler. Do you think it's as straightforward as that?
Kind of, but not really. I mean, I feel like that's like, we love that cliche. I know you and me talk about how we like that cliche, the striker-grappler matchup. At least I do, for sure. I always think those matchups are really fun. But nowadays in MMA, they're a little bit more rare because a guy like, Aljamain Sterling, he has no problem striking with you. Is he the best at it? No, he's a little hittable. He's a little awkward, and like his defense is kind of lacking for me. And he kind of has like the Tony Ferguson syndrome because I feel like those two guys are like part of that same coin.
It's volume. It's just constant volume, and that's what overwhelms people in the striking.
Oh, yeah. Same thing as like Tony back in the day. Tony's throwing wild spinning stuff, just constantly kicking you in the stomach, constantly kicking you in the shin, and then throwing like long straights at you. This guy, he's spinning at you. He's throwing a ton of punches. He might even throw in a jumping knee in there. He might throw a wild, weird head kick at you. Here's a body kick randomly. Like he just constant, but he's hittable whenever he's stepping in. And that plays into Sean O'Malley's strengths, who likes when guys step in on a straight line and, cracks them. He likes it when you're in your 30s, late 30s doing it mostly. But he does like that. He does like that a lot. At the same time, though, Sean O'Malley, he has like some competitive no-gi grappling accolades. They're not great. Like he just kind of does it. It's like that's like a common thing. You see like guys like Gilbert Melendez and other guys just go, you know what? I'm grappling today. I'm gonna go grapple on Fight Pass. And Sean O'Malley was one of those guys. Um, I don't think he was necessarily doing great at that though, compared to like other guys like Clay Guida had some success in there, who I think he actually was one of the guys he grappled, but he's not on the level of an Aljamain Sterling, who is just the man when it comes to being on the mat.
One of the great things I was a little bit like a lot of people. It took me a while to truly appreciate how good Aljamain Sterling was. Because it was just one of those guys, you'd see him on like the prelims of like a pay-per-view card. He'd be fighting like the Cody Stamens of the world, and bless you.
That wasn't. It was my chair, but I made that face because it was funny. I made the face because I remember. I always remember. It was. I hope that was your chair and you not farting. I've never farted on camera yet.
Yep. And then I think it was the second Piotr Jan fight where I truly realized how good Aljamain Sterling was, and because Piotr Jan was a guy who carried this real sort of mystique around him. Like, because he had like this elite level striking, he could hold his own in the grappling. And then I think the way that Aljo would sort of like chain his takedown attempts, he'd fail at the first one, but he'd keep it going and then eventually get Jan down. I just thought, God, he's cracked it. He's absolutely cracked it. And kudos to him. And obviously we've seen him go on to do better things since then. How easy do you think it's going to be for him to take down Sean O'Malley? Because that's where the big X and O regarding this fight is, can Aljo get the takedown before Sean lands the big power shot?
I think it depends on how Aljo wants to play it. Aljo has been out front open saying, no, I'm going to take him down. I'm going to take him down and beat him up. What's he going to do about it? Nothing. And but if Aljo decides to run in that straight line with that crazy input, he's running into a shot, and that could put him out and make me a very sad man. But I think if he goes out there and looks for the takedowns and does it in a smart fashion, I think he can effectively get him down pretty easily and quickly. He has everyone goes, oh, his takedown percentage is really low. You have to understand, this guy is shooting 5 takedowns at once at you. Because if he doesn't get the takedown, he still has a hold of you, and he's trying for a second one, then a third, and then a fourth, and a fifth, and he got you on the 7th one. Congratulations. Now you have to deal with this guy on top who is doing stuff to like he did to Takeya Mizugaki back in the day. Like, just an incredible grappler, incredible wrestler, and he was beating up Henry Cejudo, who was a gold medalist in wrestling, on the ground. He took him down and was just letting it rip as Cejudo was standing back up. He's a scary guy to get into a wrestling match with, and I think it'd be real dumb for him to run in that straight line and do it, because I think he can take down. I think the tall, lanky guys don't have like, unlike a Weili Zhang or Volkanovski, they don't have that low center of gravity to be able to like defend getting taken down and like put lopsided. So this is where a guy like Aljamain Sterling can really take advantage of, kind of like Piotr Jan. But the difference between them, I think, is Piotr Jan isn't used to having to have control someone on the ground for a very long time. Aljamain Sterling isn't going to have that problem controlling somebody like Piotr Jan. Or like a Sean O'Malley.
And the other big concern I saw from the Piotr Jan fight for Sean O'Malley, he was giving up his back a lot trying to get to his feet. Now, admittedly, a lot of that would have been due to Sean realizing, hey, Piotr Jan isn't really a big submission threat in that position.
Yeah.
But if he tries doing that against Aljo's one of the best back takers in the sport.
Yeah, if not the best, I think. Damian Maia's retired.
Yeah.
So,
but Maia's number one in that regard, but
of all time, he is the human backpack. But Aljo has to be like in that top 3. That's a bad position to be in against a guy like Aljamain Sterling.
On the other side, though, the big concern I have when it comes to Aljamain Sterling is Aljo on the whole, I think I'm right in saying Aljo has had a big reach and height advantage over all of his title opponents so far. This is the first time he's going to be facing someone who has that sort of length and reach to cause him problems. So that's something that, if you were Aljo, that would give me a lot of concern as well.
Yeah, I think that would make me go, Or do I even like want to risk standing with the guy for too long? Like, it also would it also would suck because your entries into ranges where you feel like you can grapple would be a little bit tougher as well. Oops. Apologies, I had to sneeze. I felt it coming and I was trying to avoid it. But for me, I feel like, oh, that's going to be harder to kind of enter that range in which you feel comfortable changing levels and taking someone down because you were the one always dictating range. Now you have to deal with someone who you're dealing with his range, not vice versa. So that could be a little difficult.
Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be a really fascinating fight. I put the opinion poll up earlier today. At the moment, at the time we're recording this, Aljamain Sterling getting 70% of people picking him to win this one. Sean O'Malley coming in at 30%. So which way is this one going to go? Is this McGregor versus Aldo, where the big media UFC project lives up to the hype? Or is this Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till?
I think it's Tyron Woodley, Darren Till. I think Jan showed a blueprint of how to consistently take a guy down like O'Malley, and here comes a more aggressive and craftier and I think outright better wrestler, and Aljo coming in. Another thing that I think is Aljo, he's much better at holding and controlling position and a much better submission threat. I think he's going to get a submission within the first three. But that said, I always like to do this whenever it's kind of that, hey, it can go either way. It's just much more heavily favored in this way. Like Aljo, I think it's much more heavily favored towards Aljo. O'Malley can do some work with Aljo's awkward and defensively lacking, is how I'll put it, striking style.
Yeah. I can just picture, and I'm not really a big Sean O'Malley fan, I have to admit this. I can picture a moment with Sean cracks him. I have to be honest.
Yeah. I picture a moment where Sean cracks him and I call in sick for the recap video. I might get sick, who knows?
To be fair, I had to do that at times when I was covering them myself.
Yeah.
Because actually at 269 I was in the hospital because I blew out my ACL.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Which is really funny.
Yeah, not for me. I was in a lot of pain.
I mean, for the reason why. Oh man, this wonderful sport of ours.
Yes, it's the most unpredictable sport, and it's just so topsy-turvy. And I think we're going to get that at UFC 292. On the whole, Joe, I have to say, I think fairly decent little card.
I think we got something good here. I think this card's really good. I mean, it definitely helps that you and me got a good amount of time cracking jokes and laughing about it. I think that's usually a sign of a good card. Usually, whenever you and me are like, when they really hate Canada, like it's not a very good card. I think this is a pretty good one. I'm actually very excited for this. It's my turn to pay this time, so I'm not going to be upset about paying this one unless O'Malley wins. Then I'll be upset. I'm a known O'Malley hater openly, and I still think he has a chance of winning. But I don't like the man.
Yeah. And thank you very much for tuning in for the UFC 292 preview show. As mentioned before, me and Joe have had a lot of fun putting this one together. If you'd like to support us in any way, then you can please do so. At Instagram, we have an It's Not Cagefighting. You can follow me at Twitter on INCagefighting. We also have a Patreon page, so if you would like to financially support us, you can do so. Also, if you are on the Patreon page, you get the chance to nominate any card in MMA history for Joe to recover as part of his retro review series. And speaking of the retro review, hopefully, Joe, we will be having a new one on the main channel. Would you like to tell us what it's going to be?
Oh, I'm very excited for this one. We get to go to WEC for the first time in retro review history. So, I mean, it's not a very long history, but it's an awesome one. And we get to cover UFC 48, where we get to watch a man with an awkward chin get his legs turned purple. It is a haunting experience, and I loved it.
Yeah, WEC, in my opinion, one of the best defunct promotions, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's I think there's a legitimate argument for it being better than Pride. I'm not gonna pick between those two. It's like picking between which children I love more. I'm not doing this question,
Or
but
Salma Hayek
I
and
think the
Sofia
argument's there.
Vergara. The big Luke Thomas Sophie's choice.
Is that his?
Yeah,
I think
like,
you could do one for me. I think you could do like I don't know if you're familiar with her, the Ana de Armas. I think she's the most beautiful woman in the world right now. As a single man, I think her and the blonde bomber will even say. I don't. I'm not picking between the two.
Also on this main channel, you'll have done a recap of the Luque versus Dos Anjos card, so that will hopefully be online right now. And in a couple of weeks' time, we will have not one, but two preview shows coming up. We mentioned before we will be covering the Grosso versus Shevchenko fight night to see whether or not it's vengeance or vindication in the women's flyweight division. And we'll be back as well for UFC 293. Can Sean Strickland pull off the upset and silence the hometown crowd against Israel Adesanya? That's everything coming up here on INC Live over the next couple of weeks. But now though, my name has been Karl Bainbridge, that's been Neal, and we hope to see you again in a few weeks' time. Bye bye for now.